According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, to comfort means to ease the grief or trouble of, or to console. However, the phrase comfort women means anything but that. It is the name given to over 200,000 young females who were taken from their homes and forced into sexual slavery. The majority of these women were from Korea, but others came from lands that were then under Japanese rule, such as the Philippines. These comfort women are referred to as 할머니, which translates to grandmother in Korean. They continued to protest what had happened to them and demand compensation and a sincere apology from the Japanese government and army. Comfort women, Japan's hidden history. Comfort women were young women and teenagers, usually between the ages 15 and 22, who were forcefully taken from their homes, often oblivious of what they would be required to do. They were told that they would be making uniforms for the Imperial Army or be told of other employment opportunities. With the unsaid threat of banishment from the land they had lived in, and the possibility of having their few belongings taken away, many of the young women willingly left their homes. Others who did not comply were forcefully taken by the Japanese army, beaten, and physically abused till they complied. Some were taken from their homes, and others were even abducted from the streets. They were taken all over the countries that Japan had conquered. They did not know where they would be going or when they would be allowed to go home. Once there, they were sent immediately to work in brothels known as comfort stations. These stations were meant to improve the morale of the Japanese army and lessen the chances of sexual assault on the common citizens after the rape of Nanking. However, this led to countless soldiers lining up to rape these young women. There were lines behind each door, and they worked for hours each day, being raped by up to 50 times a day. Some of the young girls even committed suicide because of how shameful they felt, and because of the physical toll it took on their bodies. Others died because of the physical abuse from the soldiers. When sick, rather than feeding the comfort women valuable medicine, they simply killed them. Yoo Ok-soon, a former comfort woman, said, "How is this a comfort station? It was an execution ground." When the war ended, some were brutally killed to keep the existence of comfort women a secret. Others on the front line suffered the same fate as those of the soldiers: death. The comfort women who were allowed to go back to their homes were often disowned by their family, and society rejected them for being deflowered before marriage, and shamed them for not keeping their innocence. After the horrible abuse the Japanese army put the young women through, they were left with sexually transmitted diseases, or left sterile from the medications given to them by the army. Other comfort women could not even fathom bringing up what had happened to them, considering it a shameful past that should never be mentioned. Comfort women were left with irrevocable physical and mental and emotional damage. Many were left with permanent scars from their time as comfort women that remind them constantly what they have been through. Ever since Kim Hak-soon, the first person to testify, told the world what had been done to her, there have been countless negotiations and protests, often led by the comfort women themselves. In the beginning, Japan refused to acknowledge that comfort women were in fact raped by the Japanese Imperial Army and that the government had a part in it. Later on, the government acknowledged what had happened during World War II and apologized for their actions. Former Chief Cabinet Secretary Koichi Kato has said, "The government again would would like to express its sincere apology and remorse to all those who have suffered indescribable hardship as so-called wartime comfort women. Former Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi announced in a letter directed to comfort women, "I thus extend anew my most sincere apologies and remorse to all the women who underwent immeasurable and painful experiences and suffered incurable physical and psychological wounds as comfort women." Many of the comfort women did not accept the apologies. They felt the apologies were insincere and that their demands were not acknowledged or met. However, the Japanese government insists that they have already apologized and that any more would be excessive. Japanese Prime Minister Abe has said, "There is no evidence that the Japanese army kidnapped and managed comfort women." Japan and Korea's relations have been terse ever since the Japanese colonization of Korea. However, the comfort women issue has only increased the tension between the two nations. There has been countless negotiations between the two countries, but little progress has been made. In 1995, a fund was set up for the comfort women, but the women did not accept it as official compensation because it did not come from the government. Instead, it was funded by private donations. In 2015, a deal was made between South Korea and Japan, in which Japan agreed to pay 1 billion yen, which is roughly around $8.7 million. In return, Korea was asked to take down the comfort women's statue in front of the Japanese embassy. However, many of the people were not happy with the deal. The former comfort women were not consulted in the making of the deal, and not only was the apology vague, but it did not specify what the Japanese Imperial Army did to the young women. Not only were there diplomatic issues between Korea and Japan, there was much debate, even within Japan. Japan's right-wing politicians were against the continued apologies, saying that it was damaging to the patriotism of the nation. They denied that comfort women were forcefully taken and insist that they were paid prostitutes. On the other hand, left-wing officials such as Kono Yohei have taken steps to apologize and make reparations. They have found valuable information regarding comfort women and have issued apologies, one of being the Kono Statement, which is one of the first official apologies by the Japanese government. It has been many years since World War II started, but the fight for comfort women continues. Now, there are only a few left to tell their story and fight for their voice. It is our role to make sure this event in history is not forgotten and is resolved, even if the comfort women are not here to witness it. This issue must not be put to rest for the sake of diplomacy or compromise. The tragic story of comfort women must no longer be a forgotten, hidden moment in history.